that we've had a lot of people that have come at different times for city council meetings. During a city council meeting, it's not good for back and forth. It just doesn't work like that. And so I wanted to have a chance for us to have that conversation. I want to make sure, as I listen to the fears, the concerns, the things that people like and that they don't like, it becomes very obvious that mostly what we're trying to achieve is the same thing. So this is just a clarification of where we're going with this, and give you a chance to say, I make that statement. I want you to challenge that statement and say, well, what does that look like? We'll talk about the things that are that we're able to do through actual law. I call it the carrot and the stick. So the stick are the things that we can demand through our ordinances, through our legal mechanisms, and the carrot is for the things that we can't. How do we inspire people to do something that is more, that is better, that is something that is that every time you do any kind of development, it detracts from our way of life, and so it's trying to get them to add something back in that will at least offset that and hopefully do something more to make it better. So, so we're going to talk about. All right, as we go through here, the one thing I want to make sure that we do is let's be civil. Please don't be afraid to challenge, but let's do this in the spirit of cooperation because we are here to do the same thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Question, sir?
Absolutely.
At what point in time will someone be able to ask a question? Will we need to wait till after your presentation?
I don't have a real presentation. I have a general structure. It's meant to be a little bit fluid. I wanted to keep it for general structure, but this should be an open conversation. If you want to skip ahead, cover something that's not on here, to the best of my ability, if it wasn't 2 minutes ahead of time, I've got some background.
Sure.
Questions anytime.
Yeah. I just ask that you just, let's keep it kind of organized so that we don't see here till midnight, but this is a chance for you to have a voice, to hear about what we're doing, why we're doing it, challenge that, come up with other ideas. It's really a time for us to do that. So,
Can I ask the question then to start off?
yeah, please.
Okay. Just so everybody knows, I'm Bruce Alexander. I live at 516 Vienna, and I just got one thing maybe set the table because it's a concern that I've had and several other people have had from the beginning. I'm just going to read a couple of lines and then a question.
Sure.
You know, there's been a lot of discussion on how the proposed UDO is being done to provide clarity in both the current CZO and the subdivision ordinance. My understanding of the push behind the changes was a combination of a change in state law concerning the authority the city has over development in ETJ, and as represented by the city, various conflicts the city claimed to have between the CZO and the subdivision ordinance causing issues with proposed new developments. Okay? Throughout the UDO process, we've been told on multiple occasions that the primary reasons for the UDO is to meet the development challenges of properties in ETJ by providing guidance on how new development is built and to help prevent unwanted development. My question is this. Please provide the details of what is proposed to be changed in the new UDO, if anything, for the properties within the central core or the original plat of the city. We've been told there's no changes there, but however, we still have those concerns because we haven't seen any draft documents. Will the properties within the core of the city continue to be protected from growth by the requirements of the CZO concerning lot size, setbacks, zoning, and planned unit developments, or will these items be tossed in favor of high-density development in select areas of the city? I'd like to answer that.
I don't question, no problem. So one of the reasons that Simple City actually came up with this terminology, it was the area of stability. And what that looks like, we need to make sure that we agree on it. So there is an area inside of Castroville that needs to remain stable. If you look at I'll give you some side information here.
Okay.
But the idea, the process that they went through, the first thing they did, if you remember back, it was a DNA study. So they studied the DNA of Castroville. What is it Like there are things that you and I can talk about what's great about Castroville, what's really unique about Castroville, what's really cool about it, and what really isn't so cool about it. And so it's studying the elements that make it unique, some of the mistakes that have happened in the past, the things that have been allowed that probably shouldn't have been allowed, and it's coming to an agreement about what good looks like. So the entire gist behind this, and we stated this, I'm going to go back to the Journey series just because that was something that we went through because we wanted to understand what it was about Castroville that made it special, and what were the different elements that made that up, and then how do we write that into the code for what's happening to our east. The biggest push for this is that we have an absolute bum rush of developments happening on our doorsteps. And so as we talked through what the areas of importance were, that was the areas of importance physically, I think, are different than the areas of importance time-wise. So the most important thing, I think, is to protect existing Castroville, protect the infill, protect what is the core of Castroville. The second thing I think is most important is Highway 90. If you drive through Castroville on Highway 90, it looks like fast food chicken market. It looks like Anywhere USA. It doesn't look any different. I was talking to William Nidwell here. He's from Holland. He drove through here. I said, "Why did you come here?" He said, "Well, we used to drive through all the time, and I thought it was just another Kansas City. And then I had to come off the road, and I went into downtown, and I was like, this is home." And it's something special outside of that. Highway 90 was as far as through here 8 years ago, and the development that's happened along that spar is very different from the development patterns that have happened with them before. And so that, I think, is time-wise, that's the longest thing that's going to happen. The most immediate thing, I think, is the least important thing overall, is what happens on our borders. It's important because it will shape how we grow. It'll shape and say, okay, so this is the only special part of Castroville, and just let everything go as it goes. Because then you're developing California, or New York, or San Antonio. And from the reason that I got into public service in the first place is because I lived in airplanes. And I started off with HLC because I thought that was the coolest part of it. And I've learned a lot since then about what it is, what we're able to do, and what we're not able to do. So that's why we've got here. The reason that we hired Simple City, this has been a process. Actually, it started after the Journey series. The biggest question that I got after that was we brought in people to talk to us about what is really cool about it, what's unique about Castroville. And the biggest question that I had is, great, aspirationally that sounds great, but how are you actually going to make it happen? And I stated it then, same things I'll say it now. It's got to be written into our codes. It's got to be written in so that historic downtown can be recreated. We can't force it. We can encourage it. And what are the elements that we want to encourage that are going to be outside of town? There's some other things the other reason that we wanted to have city planners is to help us understand how do we deal with roadway size and the juxtaposition of the roadways to the buildings and the residential to the businesses, and like all of these different elements. What are the things that are going to negative? What are the things that we don't know that are going to be painful?
Yeah, just one follow-up really quick.
Absolutely.
After I've gone through this and listened to things and participated in things, and I think I've told you and other members of council as somebody on the P&Z, I have absolutely no objections to what's going on for new development in ETJ, and I really do applaud y'all's efforts in trying to manage and control growth. I got it, no problem. But I'm shifting gears to the protection of the core of the city. And I specifically want to know what is on the table for proposed changes to the ordinances that would affect my property, their property, the people in the core of the city. Because if we're talking about multifamily dwellings on standard lots, forget it.
Right.
If you're talking about planning and developments on a city block, forget it. Our ordinances currently protect us from those things, and we'd like those to stay.
Sure.
So that's my question is specifically to you, sir.
Absolutely.
What are the intentions on those?
The intentions are to do what the public wants, and what the public wants.
That wasn't an answer to the question.
Okay.
I'll tell you, we have the same goal.
Okay.
I don't.
I'm not sure.
Well,
Let me finish. remember, let's take an approach of working together. Because we're gonna be strongest if we come up with the same answer at the end of it. This is where we wanna get, and this is where we wanna avoid. So what we wanna avoid is changing the lifestyle, changing what people who have lived here for years or decades or generations have come to experience and know and love. That's what we want to maintain. What we don't want to change is the things that people who have been here for years and decades and generations, we don't want to change that. We don't want to change your built environment. It's changing on its own. The fact that we've got 30,000 cars a day going through a town of 3,300 people is absolutely insane. So what is happening in the core, our intent is to leave the core as intact as possible. There are some things that are on the table, but we'll walk through those. Public courtyard is one specific example. And I know that, Valerie, you've asked me, are you trying to build apartment complexes here? No. We're trying to find something. We're not going to build anything on it immediately, but it should go into the plans to say, what do we want to do with public courtyard? Because right now it's in development.
Well, set that aside for a second,
Yeah.
because part of that property is actually zoned multifamily. Okay, I know that. But yeah, if you look at your zoning map, but I believe it is, the lots that the city bought from Boyd on there, I believe they are, I may be mistaken.
And that should come out through this process.
But I'm specifically interested in the property around me, the property around Helen Delavan,
Right.
the people that spoke out against the planned unit developments, multifamily dwellings, multiple houses on city blocks. Our ordinances prohibits a planned unit development in the city if it's less than 3 acres. Specifically, that was written because the city block is 2.7 acres. It was written there specifically to protect this city from that type of development.
And we need to make sure that that goes into.
Thank you.
Right.
That's all I want to make sure.
Again, anything that is in our existing ordinances that we agree, this stuff is good, this is goodness,
Yes,
there's
sir.
a reason that it's here, that needs to be replicated.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Question. A couple of times you referred to the core or the DNA of Castroville. Are you speaking specifically to the historic aspects of our city?
That's a great question. If you look at the makeup of the city, you talk about the historic core, that's what's on the historic map. That's what's on my
Yeah,
plan.
there are 2 houses right around me that are designated historic.
So that is, you are within the historic core. So
Yeah,
that
I'm over there at Washington and Mexico Street.
hey, Junior, come on in.
So, I mean, I know I'm
So,
not in the district.
Well, it's not necessarily just the historic district as it's defined. The historic core is what Henry Castro laid out with John James, and that's the plat that they laid out. The parts that are outside of that historic core, you've got River Bluff, you've got Country Village, you've got West Huntington, you've got Tiger Lane.
So basically, the city limits is what you're speaking of. Well, yeah, excluding developments.
So
Okay, in your
we're defining those as separate places. And
Okay.
so it's not that one's gonna get protected and the other one's not, because you live in one area, I live in one area, where my house is, 70 years ago, it was farming. And now it has homes, and it has homes that were built. There were a bunch that happened after World War II. So you see a lot of 50s and 60s stuff.
Yeah, but in the 70s when I saw.
And 70s came along. There was a tremendous amount of growth that happened between World War II, and I think it was 90% of all of the construction in Castroville happened between from 1944 and 2000.
And you spoke to what makes Castroville special. I can tell you exactly what makes Castroville special. It's the people. It's me.
Absolutely.
It's her. It's him. It's
Absolutely.
all of us.
Community.
It is exactly the community. If you start chipping away at the bindings on the community, the whole thing unravels.
100% agree.
So we need to stand together. We all need to come to an agreement. Like Bruce says, that needs to be rock solid. That there's not going to be a multifamily. Y'all aren't gonna cave to developer incentive to go ahead and say, okay, well, we're gonna change this, we'll rezone it so you can do it.
Right. So
We don't want,
Right.
just be clear.
Exactly.
We don't
Well,
want it.
there are certain types of development, like what Josh proposed, if it was proposed somewhere that way, it was a very interesting application. It had open public space, but the fact is that the place that he put it, it violates the social agreement that the city has with the people who live there. And it's just,
But we
it's
had
changed.
to fight so hard to get that to happen.
Yeah, it didn't.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
we
did,
did.
sir.
Well-
Yes,
Yeah, we did.
absolutely.
So just showing up, well, so fighting, absolutely. You don't have to be, like, you don't have to strangle somebody. The fact that everybody showed up, if the words would have been different, and if they would have been, hey, listen,
Laws on the books.
what's that?
Laws on the books.
It should have been a no-go the first
Now that
time.
we did-
Well, we'll-
Never got where.
So there was some confusion in our codes, and that's one of the things, Valerie, give me a little bit of room here. Understand that we are trying to do the same thing. So,
Okay, can I say something?
absolutely,
And I'm gonna just tell this to everybody sitting here, because some of you are not aware of this. And you certainly are. But I, as much as anybody else, want to be on your side. And can you imagine how great this city would be if we were all in agreement on what nice is and what we all think Castroville should be, or is already? Yes. It doesn't need to change. That's why people come. But the problem is there's been such not only lack of transparency, but total distrust. You, Mr. Mayor, as you know, you in a meeting, in a council meeting, a councilwoman, and she will verify this, you asked her directly, do not vote for Bruce Alexander to be on the P&Z, and she asked you why, and you said, because we don't like him. Am I
okay,
correct?
so that is incorrect.
Not during a council meeting, but we
Beforehand,
had,
Okay,
we had,
beforehand.
so I did not,
Okay.
and let's clear this up. I did not tell you, don't vote for him. What I said was, I'm concerned, and I'll say this again, and I will catch up with that. And I have not talked about that in a public forum because I didn't want to disparage Bruce. I have concerns, and we talk about these things. Wait, let me
I
finish.
think we should say what we should want to say.
Just let me finish, okay? So the fact is that I told her that I was concerned about it because I was concerned that he was going to be a detractor. I was concerned that he would be disruptive. And
Wow.
and
And I
you said
told
he
Bruce-
was a bully.
Yes.
absolutely. And that's the way that I felt. And this is why I haven't talked about it in a public
And
forum.
that's why I
Wait,
wanted
let
to
me
make
finish.
it public.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. I
But
have no
I'm
problem.
gonna add another piece.
Let me finish, please.
Okay, go ahead.
So I didn't say it publicly because I would never disparage Bruce publicly. And I talked to Bruce about this afterward and said, and I get it
Only
straight on with
because you knew it got out.
Well, yeah, because it got back to him. We talk about all kinds of things. When we're talking through things, I'll tell council what I'm concerned with, what I think the risks are, and we always have to look out for that. Having a good cohesive unit. I don't care if, like, I actually like it when people have different preferences. On city council, we have a different, like, every single council member has a slightly different idea of what good looks like. I like it when people have a different viewpoint than I do. But when they do it in a spirit of cooperation, and I'll tell you, honestly, I have been very happy. Bruce has proven me wrong. I have seen him be very cooperative, and I'm okay with being
Before
wrong.
that,
Like that.
he was nothing but cordial at every meeting.
No, not completely. But we can argue about that.
You're talking to the council, where does collusion stop?
Solution. So
Because if y'all are saying, okay, don't vote, and then you talk to him,
I
don't vote.
don't, I don't tell them how to vote. I tell them what I'm concerned
I'm
with.
sorry you did that.
You told me you didn't want us to vote for him because you
Because
thought
I
he
was
was a
concerned.
bully
Yeah.
and you did not like him and he was gonna be a
I
distraction.
said I don't think it's a good idea to put him on as a primary.
I'm sorry I had to bring this up. And the only
I don't
reason I'm
mind.
bringing it up is because I want everybody to realize there's a mistrust here, and this is why. And then this is part B. Part B.
We should have done this
He
8
wanted,
months ago.
he wanted to be on the P&Z. You guys did everything you could to keep him on.
No, we didn't.
Okay, hang on.
I asked him to be on P&Z.
Okay, would you like to have it on?
I've asked him twice.
Okay,
I've asked him twice to be on there. I have worked with
okay.
Houston
Well,
on
when
boards.
it came to the meeting where he was, he went up and presented himself very well, and all his credentials.
Yep.
It was like, nah, we want to see if we can get more diversity. You're already on board, aren't you? HLC, Priscilla, how many are you on? Two, how many, or somebody else, two? Oh, well, then you can't be on two, sorry,
Yeah.
no,
But that was a discussion
this
between
gets
different,
so old.
hold on. That was a discussion between different council members. That is not what I said. That was what
That was in the
another,
meeting.
I understand.
I watched the live stream.
Let me finish. So,
Can't argue with that.
well,
Go
now, go back and listen to the live stream again. I didn't have that concern. Before I started as a city council person, I was on 3 boards. I was on HOC, I was on E&Z, and I was on the Parks Board. We don't have a lot of people get on these boards. I have no issues with it.
I understand
I think it's actually really good, especially with the historic district, to have somebody, we have to make sure that it doesn't become a conflict of interest, but it's not a conflict
that.
of
That's
interest.
not what you said in the meeting to him.
Did I tell you that I thought you
It was,
should?
no, it was public hearing, Paul, and
There's a council member that's not here tonight to defend himself
Right.
or explain.
That- I was
So you can go back and listen to the meeting and find the ones that were.
There's other people on 2 boards, and y'all
I agree.
are running on 2 boards.
I totally agree.
it has
I
the
did-
appearance.
Yes.
And it, what you're being,
Yes, oh, sorry.
Yes.
I raised the issue because I didn't want the majority of 2 boards to be the same people.
And I totally understand that, but you know, then the next meeting, you voted him in. That was because why? Nobody else,
And I
nobody,
voted for it too.
oh, right, I agree. But nobody else came forward, is that it?
That wasn't it.
No, we had other members, we had somebody that is typically on boards. If somebody's already an alternate, we'll give them the opportunity to sign up for a full
Right.
board position. And I did ask the question, if Ed had asked to be on that, and he hadn't. And Houston had put his in. Like I said, I think Houston is a great addition.
What I would say to this is that it's not, what Paul here, tree the tip, but when you lose trust, then when they experience that, you're already standing towards disbelieving or seeing it differently.
Yep.
And that's, I think, that, because I'm the same way.
What I see and what I hear is the truth.
Right.
That's all I'm gonna say.
So I think that we need to continue to build this. And I'm sorry that the trust was broken. There were some misunderstandings.
No,
We
there was
should,
not. There was not a
there's a
misunderstanding.
lot of misunderstandings.
You and I and Claudia sat together after an economic meeting, and we had this long discussion,
Yeah.
correct?
correct.
And you were upset that we were talking about code enforcement. You were upset that code enforcement wasn't happening. She was upset that code enforcement was happening. It was the,
I'm here to tell you, code enforcement is very selective. If you
it
get on
is,
somebody's
it has
bad
a
side,
lot of work to be done. You had talked about the brush pile.
don't change the ordinance because of me.
What's that?
You changed an ordinance. Where's Scott, y'all rewrote an ordinance regarding fence, how to determine the front fence
Right.
because of me.
There were a lot of questions on that one. Okay, so that's totally fine. And what we've got to do here,
I'm
John,
sorry that I have to do that too. I'm not the kind, I have never been involved in politics in my life. I've told you before.
Yep.
And it's not until this city council, the things that y'all have done and are trying to do that you're not listening to the people. And I'm hoping what you're saying about no high density, that's gonna be reflected when we go to
Yep.
Central City the next 2 nights. And we're not gonna see maps full of density everywhere. I'm praying on that.
and I think this is an iterative process. We have identified some of the things inside of that process. Houston brought some of this to our attention where, and I talked to a couple of other people, and I won't talk about them because they're not here. They had kind of the same issues. I talked to one and she said, I started to fill it out, but it got to this question and it was A, B, or C. And I didn't think any of them were right. They weren't what I wanted. I didn't want to answer it in a way that I didn't want. And I tried to skip it. I couldn't skip it, so I just killed the whole thing. So we need to fix it. And all of this is about fixing it so that we have that transparency.
And I would say that compounds the trust issue.
And
If
I
you
know,
don't have a good answer,
I
and
know.
it looks rigged,
I know.
which it does, or did,
Because you came to me and my sister and said, we were trying not to get him on board. You said it wasn't about not getting Bruce on the board. Well, no, it was about not getting Bruce on the board.
I had this conversation with him.
Me
It
and my
was-
sister right at the meeting afterwards.
The only concern that I had with Bruce, and again, he's proven me wrong with this, is that I was afraid that he was gonna be more disruption than help. And he's
What are you basing that on?
based on his activities at some of the other meetings.
Really?
And, you know,
That's
we,
what I mean.
I don't hate you. I called you and talked to you. When I finally got your number.
Yes,
Right.
you did call me.
So you have to understand that, and this isn't just me, your council you have on there right now, again, we don't always agree on what right looks like, but everybody agrees that we want to find a good solution that works for everybody, and we all emphatically believe that we represent you. I don't get anything out of this.
But Darren, we don't want you to, I'm gonna use the word bully, but that's only because I can't think of anything else. Bully Sheena or Paul or David or John or Debbie.
Do you think I
Nobody
should bully
bullies
her?
me. Everybody knows me. Sheena don't get bullied. Oh, yeah. Retired Air Force Master Sergeant Medic. I have no problem telling you how it is.
I'm just
I
a
have no
bitch straight up,
possibility
but
I just say, after I
bullying.
went home from that meeting,
Yep.
I went home and asked my husband, who was the school board president here for 10+ years. I said, would you ever think to tell one of your members to not vote for something or someone?
Let's talk about this again. Do you think it's appropriate for me to express my concerns if I have them?
In a meeting where everybody can hear it.
I don't know.
I don't want to disparage somebody in
Then if you don't wanna say it in public, then it shouldn't be said. It's that simple.
We talk about a lot of things that concern me, and council does this as they talk to staff through these things. They bring up their concerns, they bring up their questions, and the fact is that we have a question. We're beating this dead horse because Bruce is there, and he has proven me wrong. He's been cooperative on these, and I think that it's a great addition. So, I mean, you can continue to beat me up about something that was a
We're just
misunderstanding.
trying to get you to not repeat
Explain why there's
the error.
no
I get it.
for us.
I know.
On one thing, I remember for Houston's appointment is he was also on the planning commission, zoning commission.
Well, it's the HLC.
Oh, yeah.
HLC.
Somebody, I think the question was, is it a conflict or something like that? And we were waiting for the attorney to give us the okay.
And it's,
Yeah,
It's not.
it was
So
brought
and
up,
Kyle are on the same. aren't they?
Yeah, I can only tell you what I remember from that meeting, but
This is why it's.
Well, you can go back.
circus.
go back
It is a
and,
circus.
so go back and listen to the meeting, and you'll hear that Councilman Merz brought up the fact that he was concerned that there was a conflict of interest. He looks after these things. And Paul, as he just stated, was concerned that we have too many that are on the same. And I don't think there's an issue with either one, because if we have people that are smart and productive, cooperative, and work together,
And willing to serve.
and willing to serve, that's the biggest thing.
you can't get anybody to even volunteer.
Right.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So I think that we have two really good additions, and two good additions that are looking out for the stuff that you're concerned with.
And I don't want to be discouraged either. I just wanted to, for everybody to know what can go on and it's not right. So
I agree.
let's just end it there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's vote.
So understand that all of you are a part of this. You can interrupt and ask questions. Let's just keep the conversation.
Related to this discussion, Darren had that conversation with Sheena based on what you're talking about now. He never had that conversation with me. It would be wrong for any city council person to talk to the other members.
Right.
So I don't know who he talked to, but he didn't talk to me about it.
I never said it.
And so that was a private conversation. But Darren didn't go around and ask us individually what we think or way we should vote or anything. That never comes up. And so I just want, because it seems like when he said something, it sounded like he was saying he goes around and talks to people. He doesn't. He might
I
talk to
made
one
that,
individual, but that's it.
I was trying to give you an example.
Right.
You know,
What needs to happen is Darren doesn't have a vote, obviously. But anybody else that has concerns need to vote based on their concern. But they don't need to try to influence someone else into having the same concerns.
Right.
So if you've got the concerns and you don't, never the twain should meet. You vote yours you vote yours, and I have never seen, a dissenting vote. No, maybe I have once.
Yeah, we've had a few.
David had a dissenting vote.
Even that
one time.
conversation, when we talked about Houston, there were some that thought it was a potential issue, and there were some that didn't think that it was an issue. So we don't always agree on things, but we have made an agreement to come to a compromise that works for everybody, and making sure that all voices are heard. And so part of the frustration is that I was getting some advice on how to hold meetings and how to disseminate information. And the problem was that the way that I operate, I'm not in the open. I'll have the same conversation with you and you all day long because I think that it's the right thing to do. I get nothing out of this. This serving position, I spend a ton of time doing this because I care. I don't get benefits. I don't get, there's no anything that I get out of this except the satisfaction that I'm doing something that is good for the city. My political aspirations, I've said this loud and clear, my political aspirations, where I want to go from here politically, is to retirement. I will never go for it. The only reason that I have stepped up for the city is because I care about what happens here. I care about the people here. I care about the community. And I think you'll hear the same thing from these city council members. They spend a lot of time. Sometimes our meetings are going until 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. There's a lot of stuff that's going on right now. And they give up their time. And that's not all the time they spend. They come in and they help out with, all of us lean in. We sign checks, we do transfers, we do collaboration with city staff. We spend a lot of time doing this. It's a very thankless position to do.
I'm well aware. My dad spent years on council. Mr. Davis over there, his dad was on
He was
administration.
city administrator. Yep.
A lot of work.
And council.
We're
I served on council myself, I know exactly what you're talking about.
So it's tough.
I have a question.
Yeah,
I'm
please.
gonna change gears.
Yeah.
So when we get to the UDO,
Yes.
right? Do we have, as a community, a chance to look at it before it becomes law?
Yes.
And if we do have that chance, and let's say, because I know what I'm used to, fair enough, right? And I'm done with this now, that's how I feel. But how does that process, where we can look down the list and go, yeah, I'm not comfortable, that was transparent, I feel better. And that's, I think, how we move forward out of this.
Absolutely. So I believe that there is nothing that should be off the table about discussion. So you should be quick to think of ideas. They came up with some interesting ideas for Houston Square, and the resounding answer was no.
The hell alone?
Believe no. Yes. So that was, we asked them to come up with some things that they've seen work in other areas. They brought it up, and it was I think it was about the same reaction when we had Steve Wu here, and he mentioned something about the light rail out of the park and ride.
Yeah.
I think you could audibly hear the air sucking out of the room. And it was something that he had proposed, and nobody liked it. But they're proposing these things that they've seen work in other areas, and it's up to us to say, this works, this doesn't work. To your question, we are going to slow roll the decision. I'm good at iterating, I'm good at thinking about conceptually what might be kind of cool here, but in terms of making that decision, we will take this very slowly and very methodically. Nothing's getting rushed through. Most of the stuff that we have, I put in extra public hearings when we don't need them. We will put in extra.
So there would be a hearing.
Well, there will be informal and there will be formal hearings. We will slow roll this. I want to make sure that we look at what's different between the CZO. Part of the problem was that we should have called it the CZO. We call it UDO, comprehensive and unified. The only time you have to unify is when it's not comprehensive.
Well, my question to that is follow up on Houston's comment. For lack of a better phrase, the draft document, the documents proposed to approve, that will be out, available. I know it may not be prepared now, but it'll be available for public review.
Yeah,
And
I think-
take more than 3 days before the public hearing?
Yes.
Or
No, this is,
sufficient
again, we
time
are
for
going
people
to
to
slow roll
look
this.
at it?
It is first going to go out to the P&Z.
Yes, sir.
For the P&Z to review. I don't know the exact process in terms of open to the public kind of stuff.
Okay.
I'm not opposed to doing that as another public forum kind of like this, so that we can have this opportunity. I think that we have to have the opportunity outside of a structured meeting with rules and Robert's Rules of Order and legal concerns so that we can bring those things up in a normal conversational atmosphere.
Well, then follow up one question, you made a comment about should we call it a CZO versus UDO or whatever. And this may be, this is not necessarily a question that you probably could answer, it's more of a legal question. And Deborah might even have a comment on this. But the CZO, and if I'm wrong on this, since it's based on what you said, is that the end goal that the UDO replaces the CZO?
It encompasses the CZO for the codes. It encompasses the subdivision ordinance, because right now subdivision ordinance is different than the CZO.
No,
So it's bringing it together to deconflict any questions that we have about it, any concerns that we have about it, and to bring it into one thing. It's not a wholesale rewrite.
Okay.
It's not.
Okay, well, because the CZO was like Country Village, River Bluff, that was CZO. There was no subdivision ordinance. Then the subdivision ordinance morphed out of the CZO to cover subdivisions. And now you're in essence putting everything back together in a way and tightening it up. So my question is this not an amendment to the CZO? If it is, does not everybody get a notice?
I can answer that one, because I asked Cynthia on this one.
Okay.
As with any law or anything, when it goes a certain percentage over the complete document, it cannot be amended. It has to be considered a rewrite.
Okay.
So since this is more than, I think she said like 20% of the document is being updated and changes and everything, it cannot be amended. It needs the complete
So basically, the CZO as it is goes away. And the new one
right,
comes
but
in.
not till, it won't happen until it's approved and everything like that.
So should we get to edit? Like,
Well,
Yes.
that was gonna be my
Thank you.
recommendation. Could we set up a link on the city webpage with the draft, whenever the draft is ready? And will for citizens can click on and print, for they can review and not jot down their thoughts.
We wanted.
In a timely manner.
Right.
Don't do it 3 days ahead of time.
Yeah, no, I think this is something that we should get it to a draft form as quickly as we need to deal with the
Yeah, get
the
the.
stuff that's
Well,
happening.
there was a review.
Send it.
Right. And we might even do it, I don't know, we've got to talk through the actual logistics of it. These guys do it for a living. I don't know what their process looks like. We don't want to have analysis paralysis where we sit and we think about it for 4 years. Meanwhile, everything on our borders is built out. We don't want to do that. We also don't want to do it so quickly that we overlook something that impacts your lifestyle, what you're used to.
Well, it's just stupid. So tell me what CZO actually stands for and UDO, because now I'm confused.
If you think about it is a coding, or the CZO is comprehensive zoning ordinance, and the UDO is just another name. It's a uniform development ordinance. Again, that's where I think we messed up. We changed the name of it. The intent is exactly the same. The intent of the CZO was to be comprehensive, and then it got split out. And so we were talking about whether it's called a CZO or a UDO. We also talked about a uniform development, UDC. Like there's different names for it.
Why don't we just call it development ordinances and rewrite it?
We'll make it whatever it needs to be, but just understand that it is the same thing. It's taking the CZO, conflicting it. There's some things that are in the CZO that say, in this area you cannot do this, or you can do this, and in this area you cannot do this. So it says some of the same things, and it's got some overlap. So it's deconflicting those and finding the things that we do like.
So, and just for what if, let's say some city slips in that ice cream stand. Okay, really.
Tar and feathers.
Let's just say, oh, it got through the, how do you amend that? What is that process?
It goes through, I don't know the exact process, but like anything else, Brianna knows.
Yeah, so for this, it goes through the same process as if you're changing an ordinance or including an ordinance, it has to go through the public hearing, and it has to go through planning and zoning or zoning board of adjustments, depending on what's being amended, I believe. it may just be go through planning and zoning and then city council. So, yeah.
I think it needs to go to the people,
That's the thing.
Yeah.
the people.
Everything,
And I'm
That's
anonymous.
just the ordinance.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure all this stuff out. But I hate seeing the population increase that's gonna happen with all of this extra building that we have out here. What bothers me is when I go to a city council meeting and, this is online to be voted on, and nobody's, I would think that for a town hall, this should have on it things that are coming up for immediate discussion and vote on the council. So you can get all of our ideas on the things that you're voting on, like a $75,000 toilet trailer. That was the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of in all my life. But we didn't know about it until 3 minutes before y'all voted to spend $75,000 on a toilet trailer.
It was on the agenda for, I think, how long?
But y'all
Three times.
agreed.
Right.
Yes,
So,
see, that's
but
one of the problems.
Understand that
Still
what
comes
we're
up
in, okay, hold on,
5 or
Karen.
6 times.
What we're in is a representative democracy, and it only works if you talk to the people who represent you. And I talk about this a lot. Talk to us before the meetings, talk to us after the meetings.
Even
What
then
do I
it's
say?
too late.
What's that?
Even then it's too late.
If
If
it's
I'm talking
before
to
the
you before the
meeting,
meeting.
y'all, you already know what you're gonna do. After the meeting, it's too late because you already voted.
So city council gets the meeting, gets the packet. The packet always goes out on Friday. If you want to get the packet, tell Deborah, I want to get the packet. You have the same lead time as city council members, and you just have to read the packet, see
But
what's
I
in it.
don't have the responsibility of the city council member. So if I'm the one responsible and we have a vote coming up, I'm gonna be talking to my next door neighbor, the lady down the street, the gentleman across the way. I wanna know what my constituency wants.
I would
Absolutely.
never go next door.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. But
So, and-
anyway,
No, I
I'm just
totally agree with
saying,
you, but you have
if
to
you
be.
only have 3 days lead time,
But you
that's
have to be
stupid.
proactive. No, there is so much that has to happen here. Get the packet. If you want to get involved, you have to spend some time doing it. You were on city council.
Yes,
You don't get a ton of time to do this. And I know
we have
for
more than 3 days, I promise you.
some
We
of
used to get
I get a packet on a Friday, and I go through it and I see something that I don't like.
Yep.
And I talk to Sheena. Am I supposed to believe that that's gonna make a difference on what happens when it's being voted on in
Yes.
council?
yes.
Well,
You can
hopefully
talk-
Sherry will talk to
One
Paul,
person?
and Paul will talk to David, and it'll be a merry-go-round.
Well, so you can talk to multiple city council members.
No, it didn't
I
work
know,
that way.
I know, that was, I'm sarcastic, I
That worked.
withdraw that.
So the way that you can talk to as many city council people as you want. Don't tell us what the other person said, because then you create, it's called a walking point.
Exactly.
So you can't do that. But you can talk to each one of us. You can talk to me, you can talk to all 6 members up there about your concerns, about your preferences, about your questions. You can ask all of us that.
So
Just
instead
don't
And then
tell
when
us what
does
the other one
city
said.
council take into consideration my concerns and preferences?
Yeah, we take into consideration everybody. I have.
No, when?
When?
When do you do that?
between
Is there,
Friday and Tuesday.
is there
Yeah.
any discussion
Welcome to our
amongst you about my considerations before the meeting?
Not before the meeting, but during the meeting, yes. We can't talk about it before the meeting.
No, because they have a quorum present at that point.
Okay, so let's bring this back to one conversation. Are we, is this important to you guys? Do you want to talk about something else right now? I have some other information.
As long as you go public with what,
Yeah.
no more closed door, no more hidden anything. If you're public and
There-
upfront with us, we'll happily give you feedback
Right.
and try to support you.
You have to be proactive in that process. And so part of what I have for you today is to tell you when to start looking out for things, how to get in front of it. So this is, you have to do some work. You have to read the packet. You have to talk to us.
I'm not retired. I can be a pain in anybody's
No
ass
problem.
all day long, every day.
You-
So
no
am I.
problem.
I have trouble getting my
So
trash
I
out.
have 3 different people that I go to, specifically because each one of them, given the same information, they usually come up with a different answer. So I call them up and I say, well, what do you think about this? And we'll talk it through, and they'll give me their reasoning. And because I want to see the other side of it. I want to know, like, if I talk to somebody that agrees with me, then we have the same thing. I don't learn anything from that. If I learn from somebody that disagrees with me, it helps me get that perspective and understand where they're coming from, what their concerns are. And it really helps me do a better job. That's why most of my presentations are pretty thorough.
Sweetheart, you gotta put me on
Mr.
speed
Mayor,
dial.
like I said, I just want to, I'm good. The outside stuff, we want to work with that, and we need to do that. We're way behind the curve and trying to help control and manage it. Got it, no problem. But I just want to emphasize one more time is, while I understand there'll be some changes, the core principles of the city, the heart of the city, okay? The people that, we built our house 30 years ago, the rules that we follow, the rules we built our home around, we want to make sure those core rules stay intact.
Yep.
And don't get changed.
And well, anything that does change in there, we'll walk that through.
That's the biggest concern.
Yep.
I just want
But
to-
a lot of
I totally
times
get it.
y'all don't speak plain. Y'all color it up with all this.
So we
Flowers and
continue
stuff.
to have these kinds of conversations, to have that in the open. I would love to have a conversation, an in-depth conversation about codes and how they came about. And the fact is, our codes were written off of national standards that create Anywhere USA. And that's not a terrible thing. If you, like I talked to one of my friends that is very, very involved, and we were talking about like the visual standards. We were talking about the vernacular architecture of Castroville. She said, one of the things that I really like about Castroville is that you have the pioneer, you have the 19th century stuff, you have the early 20th century, you have all of these different things that happened at different times. She likes to mix them. Other people, they feel like you stick strong to that vernacular, that original vernacular, and that's what. So it's about taking all of those and putting them into something that's functional, so that people have the option to build something that we agree with.
I just want to make one more comment about the fact
And then I'm
that
going to go over these.
what may or may not have been done right, wrong, and
Right.
different in years past. I made this comment the other night at planning and zoning at the joint, and I'm going to make that clear right now.
Yep.
Is in my 20 some odd years of building official, signing building permits, doing code enforcement, I followed the interpretation that was directed to me by the city. Okay? A developer's first job is to reinterpret and try to argue our ordinances. They're going to continue to do that no matter what you write. You can't write things so rigid. Because always remember, laws are written by lawyers for lawyers. Everything's subject to interpretation. So what you put in place and believe is solid today is only good till the next city council changes the interpretation. That was brought up the other night.
Yep.
So
And we
I
can't
just
obligate
want to bring
people.
that point up, that what was done, there are many houses that were built I would not sign building permits for, but the city administrator did at the direction of city council.
Right.
So I can tell you that for a fact.
Mhm.
So when someone wants to go out and make comments about some of the infill and some of the things that were built here, maybe different hodgepodge, whatever, they need to know the whole story behind why certain things were done.
Absolutely.
Even on a historic landmark, historic review board, there was a chairman that gave certain consideration to some properties, but denied others. So the politics has always been active in a small community. And everything is
And we need-
subject to interpretation.
And we need to work as well as we can. We want to get
Yes.
it as close as we can. Very, very clear. You're right. It will always be open to.
I don't want to argue, I just want to make a
We want to
couple
make it as
points. I
close
just
as
want to make
possible.
those points
Yeah.
that what it is, it is.
Yeah. Really good.
And when Simple City kind of references the houses that are up close, there's so many structures in here that came into play before the ordinances, and they're considered non-conforming structures. So to use those for justification to do other things is just wrong.
I agree.
So if it changes your built environment, your community experience, you're right.
Right. So I just
That's
want to
not
make
a
that
question.
point.
I mean, if you look at what you have right now,
Sure.
you have within a couple of blocks, you've got businesses within a couple of blocks.
Sure.
I talked to Sheena about this, and she's like, I don't want businesses that close.
Yeah.
But you have lived here, but that's what you started with.
I
And
understand.
so it is a matter of what did you start with? If we change what you started with, yeah, maybe it's great, but only with your agreement.
Well, there's some businesses in town in the residential areas that don't comply with the ordinance. And those came to pass long after I left, and the city still continues to allow them to function. So even the current leadership and management of the city doesn't fully follow what I believe was the intent of the rules.
And that's why we've got to continue.
Okay, and I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, absolutely. Houston, you had something else?
Well, I lived through Austin, the good,
Sorry.
where I was sitting on the couch for, no, it was a blast. I was a kid playing at the Spoke, you know, it was a great place to be. And when you look at Austin now, it is literally unrecognizable. From what developers who agreed did to what I consider my home, you know, it's gone. They, you know, and that's what I'm fighting. I don't, you know, we have this little area inside the Horseshoe that has, you know, all sorts of people. And now in Austin, you don't have all sorts of people. They can't afford it, and they're gone. Right?
That's another challenge we should talk about. But,
Yes.
and if you look at like good solid city design, you start with the middle and you grow out incrementally. But when I look at what happened, think about San Antonio. It happened like
Same
that
thing.
in San Antonio, but it got too dense. And as I talk to people, yes, we want to grow as Castroville. But we don't want to, like, again, good city design is you let the center get denser and denser and denser. But that's not Castroville. And so what would happen is you would ruin the fabric of the center of Castroville.
The soul of.
Right. And so then we've got to figure out how to accommodate some of the more affordability. Some people don't want lawns. Then let's find a place that is appropriate for them to not have lawns. That's fine. But they could. But we do have to accomplish some things. If you think about your kids at all stages, so your kids, like I talk about my kids. My daughter right now, she has her and her daughter, and she has a couple of friends that come over. She wants a yard that's big enough that her dog can go out and do her business, and that's really all she wants to deal with. And so she doesn't need a quarter acre. My mom and my dad, they live right across the street from me, pretty almost right across. And my mom loves having that size yard. She's out there gardening, sweating her tail off, and she loves doing that. My dad is
my house, please.
my dad is on oxygen, and if it were just him, he wouldn't want that. He would want something that's different. And so it's finding a place for everybody, but it doesn't mean that everybody has to be here. It means that we need to find places that are appropriate for that. And that's part of this process is where are the areas that are appropriate for this and where are they not? So what I think we all agree on is where that's not appropriate is here.
Well, one caveat to that is, you know, South Lamar, all that area is what I'm speaking to, because developers went in and those houses were built post World War II, and there was a community. And like there was a little lady that had a pig named Star that walked with a stick down to the Hispanic bakery every morning. The pig was 800 pounds. It was insane. But who wouldn't love that, right? But what happened is those houses, you get loaded, if you haven't lived through that, all of these little houses that are here, not necessarily historic, they will bulldoze in a zero lot line that thing and go 3 feet, three stories up.
Right.
And that ruins the community. And that's what scares me.
And that's one of the reasons, again, this was Simple City's idea. They said we need to identify the areas of stability. That means these are the things that need to stay stable. They need to not change.
Right.
And there are areas where it's okay for them to change because change will happen. And we have to, right now, we hired a new city staff person who could not, they came in from outside of the state and they couldn't live in Castroville because they couldn't afford it. When we look at part of what we are doing,
Well, what were you doing?
it was
Castroville's
not terrible.
expensive.
Yeah, Castroville is expensive.
I'm kidding.
People coming in on a normal.
But you get what you pay for.
We looked at this with the Economic Development Corporation. We look at what businesses are appropriate and which ones are not. There were businesses that came in. They're going to create 600 jobs, and they're going to be basically factory workers. And I'm like, we talked about this pretty extensively. What is the wage right now with a home inventory that we have? The wage that you would have to buy one of these, somebody new that's coming to work here, is minimum $85,000 a year.
Yeah,
Minimum.
they can't.
If you make less than that, so if we have people that are creating jobs that are $50,000 to $60,000 or $70,000, then they're going to be taking multiple trips. That means they will commute from outside.
Sure.
So we want to create places for them to live.
I think to your second point, we don't necessarily want to that person like your daughter who only wants a little small spot.
You don't
Why
want to
do
hear.
we don't
Inside
want
the
to.
river.
Yeah.
Right.
That's already built out.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. We're already built out, and I don't think it's
We
fair
still
to
have.
us. I mean,
How many lots do we have that still have not been developed? You guys did that number, right? How many?
Several dozen.
Yeah, 24, 25.
You sure that's all? When I look at the multiple lots, I think it's more than that.
So
Just
to
for,
that
I mean,
point,
how did Central City ever get involved with this? Where did they come from?
So we started this after the Journey series. What we talked about was our next step is to find a company that can. There are companies like Simple City. They write codes, they write ordinances, they know how to design cities. They know the implications of the decisions that we make. So we put it out to an RFP, and we had people that came in and they made a presentation. Simple City had the best experience in our minds. They did, because of the cities that they did Bastrop, they did Taylor, they've done some stuff in San Marcos, a little bit in Austin. They did small, and there's some Colorado, they did small town Texas. Each one of those is unique. Each one of those they did differently.
You brought them in anticipation of this total rewrite.
We put it out to RFP. We had a major firm that came in and said, we know your ordinances so well that we don't even need to engage the public. And we're like, no, we don't. We don't want somebody that's just going to rewrite it and not engage the public. We had another company that was similar in their public outreach. The thing that spoke to us the most was that Simple City had done things like pop-ups, so that when you do something that is proposing a change, you mock it up and let people see what it's like, see it, because most people can't visually feel it. So they've done things like that, and we liked their level of public engagement. So this started 2 years ago.
Okay.
After the Journey series, after we got some education on what are the implications of the decisions that we're making, because we knew that we had to update our comprehensive plan, and we knew that there were some things that had to be updated in the CZO. And so we looked for companies that we felt would engage the public, that had an understanding of what community life in Castroville looks like, and writes the codes according to that.
So you're anticipating a massive rewrite because
It's an update.
historically, ordinances and stuff were done by the council and the legal people.
Yep.
That's how we got our ordinances.
I know.
Am I wrong?
Please, Paul had something.
They need to be updated. They needed to be
No, and
updated.
that's not a problem. I just,
Well,
okay, so,
the other thing is that the ordinances that we still have on the books today give us San Antonio.
okay, all right,
And we wanted to
fair
make
enough.
sure that didn't happen.
That's an excellent point. Thank you for bringing that up. And y'all, as a council, are confident that Simple City has the skills to help us make that happen.
There have been honestly, there have been some challenges in communication, but you always get that. Anytime somebody from the outside comes inside, there's a learning curve, there is a point of coming together. I mean, we all live here, and we all experience a lot of the same community life, and we can't always get those words to mix right. So yeah, there have been some communication errors, but that's just part of life.
Maybe I'll throw a little curve into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simple City is an urban planning group. Whether it be Simple City or XYZ urban planning group, it just happens to be an urban planning group that the city's contracting with. They're presenting a vision. It's up to the city to either accept it, modify it, or is that basically saying the right way?
It's kind of I would say it a little bit different. Yeah, they are city planners. This is what they do. They know the implications of the decisions
Right.
that we would make if we made the streets wider or smaller, wider or narrow. What are the implications of that? If we made the grid system versus cul-de-sacs, what are the implications of that? So they understand these elements of it. What I would say is different is that they're not presenting us their vision. They are saying these are the impacts of these decisions. So this is what happens if you do it like this. Right? Yeah. And it's them trying to figure out, we're trying to do this, go back to my youth, this Vulcan mind map. They're trying to say, how do you think about it? How do you feel about this? And present some ideas that they seem to work in other areas. And to take, again, that's the reason that they study this place first.
But if we want it to stay the same, keep it the same. Park streets are 10 foot wide. New streets have to be 10 foot wide.
Karen, if I can say this there, if I'm wrong, Karen, what I'm saying is the rules of engagement changed by state law for new development. The biggest issue, as in my opinion, is to get a handle on new development and how the city wants
And I
Well,
agree with that.
So I believe in talking to y'all, so that in itself is a very important thing, is to get a handle on that. The days of us just, it's in our ETJ and these are ordinance and have a nice day are gone.
Yeah.
That letter's been taken away, so it's trying to get a handle on that.
Exactly. So can I walk you through some detail? I know that we're talking about, this is an important conversation. Can I walk through some details to show you what some of the challenges are and what we're doing about it? And let's have that conversation of, are we doing the right thing? And the end result with this, and I think that if you ask any one of the council members, they will say, I'm sorry, I've got a lot of words in this and they're taking very much a backseat, but I know how they feel about this. Even though Sheena and I and Paul and each one of us has this different view of what right looks like, we know that we represent the people at large and we're very concerned with doing it. So
Here's a perfect example. At our joint thing, I am totally against having alleys for people to drive down to park. I had to live with that up in the northeast and up in the north and everything, and I saw what alleys were. And so I'm totally against it. And Bruce can even say, Hughes can say, I'm totally against alleys. So, but we speak up, everybody on the council during these meetings and everything of, that's not my vision.
Right.
Having a porch outside my house is not my vision.
No, I like the porch.
Well, but
the point
for-
is, it's very subjective.
it is, it's everybody's point of view. And so that's why we want to make sure we get citizens' point of view also when this comes up for draft. So,
And we've got to be reasonable enough that the developers will actually be able to build it. We went pretty hardcore aspirational about a year and a half ago. Like, this is what Castroville needs, and you need to do this. And they're like, that's not enough. And so we were asking for something that they literally could not do. They didn't have. I talked to one of them. He's like, man, I'd love to do that. I don't have the model. I can't do it. I can't see the numbers on it. It doesn't make sense to me.
You need a developer for that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I talked to all of the developers. I'll be honest with you. They're not super secret meetings. Most of when I meet up with developers, it's usually at a restaurant there or a restaurant there. I might go as far as Juliana's, but I meet up with them here, and it's not like I'm not getting anything out of these meetings. This isn't to say, hey, take me on this special boondoggle trip. This is to inspire them to do better. This is for them to fall in love with this community and understand that everything that they do impacts people who have been here for years and decades and generations, and it's an important thing. And to let them know that community is important to us.
And I'm perfectly fine with give and take, you know?
But it's finding out what that
I'm
is.
good with that. Just, let's take a little more than we give, because we don't want them to walk all over us.
well, and that, see, Texas just passed a change in their law that if a developer has 50 acres or more, if they don't like our rules,
It's actually not 50 acres.
or, but
I found out
They
that it's.
actually had 50 acres written. So.
I thought it was 50 acres, and I challenged that.
uh-huh,
And what I found, because I started digging into the actual Texas government code, and
Right.
it doesn't require. The initial intent was 50 acres. I think it is much less than that. I think that
Well,
any size can.
Are
remove.
you
Either-
talking
either
about
way.
they can withdraw from our ETJ?
and
Yes.
our, yeah, and we have no say.
They have to come to us, or city council, and say, we want to withdraw from your ETJ.
Let
I
me
got it in
explain.
writing, I printed
Let me
it.
explain it to you
Or
the way
they
it
can
works.
go to the public and it can be put to a vote. That's the only two ways they can get out of our ETJ.
This is how our
Incorrect.
city attorney, this is how she briefed us.
Okay, so here, let me show you. Hold on.
Yeah,
Let me tell
this
you
is
what
what's
the
in there.
actual law says.
Printed.
So if you want to look at Texas Government Code Section 212.003, it talks about this. Yeah, I'm trying to present the current slide.
And you said Texas government code?
I got it written right there. So this is, oh wait, no, this is, sorry, different.
That's not it.
ETJ release. It's Texas Local Government Code 42.101-156. So this came out of last year's legislative session. They did a few things that really hand-hopped us. They did the SB 2038. It says that a developer who is in our ETJ can apply to have themselves removed from our ETJ and our subdivision ordinance. And we had three options. You could either approve it,
Which we're not gonna do,
we're not going to, or you can deny it,
which we are.
or you do nothing. And so
If we do nothing,
Let me
they
finish.
stay.
no matter what, if they file for it, they are being removed. If you don't approve it, if you deny it or you don't do anything, it's the same result. They are, by law, removed at the end of, I think it's 30 days.
Say 45.
But that says you have to
Yeah.
obtain signatures.
It
on
says
a
file a
petition.
petition.
Petition
And
can
what
be one
I
person.
read said that it has to, if we
Okay.
deny it as council, it
No,
has to go to
let
a
me explain it.
citizen vote.
No, it doesn't. I wish it did. That would give us,
I'm gonna bring you what I printed out. It says,
go look it up on the actual Texas
Why
government.
would they pass this law?
So I researched that, and this last, and I talked to Annie Murr, who was there previously, and I talked to Pete Flores, our representative and our senator. And I'm like, why are they doing this? And they refer, like, I spent a lot of time with them, with TML, which is our kind of our legal resource, and with their staffers to understand what is going on with this. Last session was all about Houston. They were trying to remove powers from Houston. This was written because of Houston, and they didn't want people, property owners, to not be able to unelect people that were making decisions for their properties. And so that's why they wrote this. If they can't, somebody in our ETJ can't vote me out, then they shouldn't have my regulations on them.
Yeah,
What they didn't take into consideration is Houston, their ETJ is massive,
oh yeah,
and they have 6 miles from their city limits. Ours is a half a mile.
the way I'm reading this, it says if we don't take action, they can be released.
They
But we
will
are
be
gonna take
released.
action. We're gonna say
They
no.
will be released. You can check with any attorney, and they will tell you the exact same thing.
Do you think this will go to the Supremes?
There are several cities that have already fought that. I think there was one in, if I remember correctly, there was an attorney that got rich on this. He went to a bunch of landowners, got them to hire him, and he removed thousands of acres, I think it was around Taylor, Texas, from the ETJ. And we've already had one property that has filed to remove themselves from the ETJ. It's 350 acres, I think it is, just west of the airport. And we obviously are not going to approve that. And they've already filed it. I believe that they are already, Scott, they are already out of the city,
That's correct.
the ETJ.
Yep.
So they are no, that property over just west of the airport, it is no longer in the ETJ.
Did they get
So-
signatures on petitions?
Well, now.
So that is, I'll explain that. So the signatures are from the property owners that are in the ETJ.
Contingent to the ET.
No. No,
Oh, not even contingent?
no, this is, what this says is that the property owners, if it's a single property owner, then that's 100%. If there are multiple property owners, let's say like, we had,
What's that Creekside?
Creekside,
Let's say
yeah.
Creekside was in city limits.
no, in our ETJ.
Yeah, or in our ETJ.
So Creekside would be, or what's out on Highway 90? Deer Creek? Deer Valley.
Deer Valley.
Deer Valley. So Deer Valley is in our ETJ. If they all got together and that percentage in there said, we want to be removed from your ETJ because we don't want to be subject to your subdivision ordinance, they would have to have that majority there. If a single property owner says, I want to be removed from the ETJ, that is all the vote they need, because that is 100%. That is not
So the
contingent. That is-
developer can do it just because the developer wants
Yes.
to do it.
But to your point, that unlocks the city.
It does, right.
But
Before,
you're not gonna provide police, fire, EMS, anything to them.
We have to provide
We have to.
utilities.
I think what,
Why do we have to provide utilities?
Karen,
Yeah,
before they changed it, a lot of development ordinances and rules, development law is very strong in the state, they changed things with the land. But way back when, the comprehensive zoning ordinance applied to the ETJ. It doesn't apply anymore. So if they get out of the ETJ, they basically get to do whatever they want, whatever they want. And you have no say in what's developed. Utilities is a different issue.
why? Why is it different? If
The
there's
mayor
our-
will tell you
our
that's one of the
responsibility-
questions.
Yep.
When you talk about ETJ versus the CCM, they're different issues.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry. We keep circling the goal, maybe
All right.
we need to, like, somebody needs to get out with something
I'll
else.
give you my own opinion about the CCN. The city of Castroville in 2001 went and applied for a large water and sewer CCN with the intent to manage development. It was legally told, even though I disagreed, but the attorney at the time said, if the city, because we're a general law city, people have to request to get annexation. If we control the water and sewer, we can hold that hostage in exchange for annexation. That's wrong, that's illegal, okay? You're obligated to provide the water and sewer whether they're in your EJ or not. It's a completely separate entity boundary. Mr. Mayor,
Absolutely right.
okay? So,
That makes no sense to me.
well, that's the law.
So if you look at it another way, if whether they develop in the county or whether they develop in the city, if they want the services that are inside of our CCN, which is our obligation and ability to serve, we have a monopoly inside of it to be able to serve them. So if we leverage, I think that it makes sense for us to leverage that. We can't leverage it to force them into doing things in our ordinance. But if you had people that were in the county, they're getting services, they're paying for their services, and at the same time, they're increasing the stability of our existing systems, it's a positive. So when it comes to, and this was one of the things that I had put in here, is that every time we add somebody into our water system, we don't have such a huge issue with capacity right now. We're reaching our capacity limits, but part of what staff has been working on is how we increase that to make sure that the developers are taking that bill.
Yeah, I thought they were bringing their water rights with them.
Water rights and water capacity. If you look at what Alsatian Oaks did, the big bubblegum tower out by Castroville State Bank, that was paid for upfront by the Alsatian Oaks developers, and through a TERS, a mechanism, they get reimbursed for doing even offsite improvements for them. So they paid for that upfront with the dollars of that day, which are significantly less than the dollars of today, and then they get paid back over time. And it was paid back out of the taxes that were developed, that were generated by that development.
But Karen, there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to the water, and I'm not familiar with what your current ordinance are, your utility policies. But the subdivision ordinance was written in 2002, specifically requires a transfer of water rights in exchange for service.
Right.
But if the subdivision ordinance is not applicable in ETJ, it becomes an interesting challenge to the utility policies on how they address that. So there's a lot of things that will change by state law that the city's trying to work with new development in ETJ.
And we have to update our utility policies as well to make sure that what we're putting into development agreements supersedes our utility policy, because our utility policy does not require underground utilities. If you talk to, I've been to many CPS conferences, the single biggest improvement to reliability of an electrical system that is, well, that, or for existing systems, all that tree trimming that happened, tree trimming is the best way. Trimming the lines away from the trees, away from the lines, that is the biggest thing that impacts their reliability.
But they're late to the party on that.
Right. So it happened like this. I mean, this happened 70 years ago. The electrical system was built out. I think it was back in like I think that was when.
3 times last night.
Yeah. I think we all did.
Wind, I believe.
Well, lightning struck a transformer over near Walmart too.
Oh, okay.
I think we all experienced weird anomalies. So the point is that we want to make sure that they add, like with the water system, every time they bring on new capacity, we start looping those in together. Right now, we have the wells that we have, and we have some cutoff points, but we don't have full redundancy. As we start building out new wells that they are paying for, part of that is to tie that in with the existing ones so that we have a means of redundancy inside of it. So we increase our reliability over time. When we look at, some other people have said, if we bring on new utility customers, it's going to cost us more for our utility rates, which is not true. What's that?
Yeah, speak louder.
Oh, sorry, Junior. Come over here. So with the utility system, if you bring on with our existing utility, think about country village estates. They've already built out the water system. They're using that same thing. The concern that we had was the lift station, and so that is getting improved. But they didn't have a development agreement. They built according to our existing rules and policies. They built it. Every time they add a new customer on there, it adds to the funds that we're getting, which ultimately our goal is to, our utility rates, I'll be honest, I think they're too high. I thought
Yeah, you think?
they're commensurate with a lot of, they're not so far off other utility systems. They are a little bit higher, for sure. And ultimately, we want, part of quality of life is reduced cost of living. While property values are going up, we're constantly getting hit by inflation. And we're trying to minimize that wherever possible. That's why we've been concentrating in some other areas. So the question people have, adding new people onto our system does not decrease reliability unless we're at a capacity issue, and there are very few things that we're at capacity issues with.
It does still put a strain on the aging existing system.
Not out there, because that's on the only thing that's tied in.
Oh, I thought we were talking about cities. You're talking just developments?
Yeah, every time.
No, they'll be brand new, so.
Most of it, yeah. We'll tie it in with the existing systems, but we'll tie it in with cutoffs and we will increase the robustness of our system. And we still have to, if you look at, we did a couple of changes over the last 3 years that have tremendously, they will tremendously increase the reliability in river power. The one main replacement down Lafayette Street, that was the biggest pain in the butt. And it was a real, it was a real bummer for people that lived around there because it lasted so long. But we haven't had a citywide outage since then. Before that, we were having 2 and 3 citywide outages for water every single year because of that one point failure. So we look at these things and we try to improve it. So I've gone a little bit off of this.
No, you're good. I mean, this is all information everybody's wanting to know, so.
So I think
Hey,
that,
circle around
And on the utility thing, the last city council meeting, we had, they did a presentation, a breakdown of the utility bill. And one of the big questions was the fuel adjustment charge. Everybody's like, what the heck is that? I don't have gas. Why is there a fuel adjustment charge? And they broke it down. You get a fuel adjustment charge because the plants that are generating our electricity are fed by natural gas. So as the price of the natural gas fluctuates, that fuel adjustment charge is that fluctuation.
Did you get an answer on how my sewer bill can be less? No, wait. No, my sewer bill is up. Thank you very much.
so it is very, wastewater is incredibly expensive. Water
Sure it
is
is.
much less expensive because you build your pumping system, your treating system, your storage system, and your pressure system. So that it doesn't cost us, aside from power, cost us that much extra to supply the water. The wastewater, the processing plants, the lift stations, it's just more expensive.
I thought we
Well,
were-
and then we did the average. So for the sewer, it's the average beginning 1 October. We even said this at the last city council.
That's how we
meeting.
set the rates, is what you said.
Yeah, it said how much you paid for the next year. Begins 1 October through January.
September 27th, I think.
Four different months and throw out the highest.
Highest one,
And average.
right.
Your usage in October, November, December, and January, which equates to your November, December, January, and February bills. You drop the highest one and you take the average of the other 3 months.
And that'll set
Because
your
we
rate
don't,
for the next year.
monitor, we don't gauge.
Wait, are you telling me everybody in Castroville's rate is different?
Yes.
Yes, depending on how much you use.
It depends on how much you use.
There's,
Yeah.
so before, because I call, we have we inherited the breaker system. But I was gonna do what Marcy did and get a separate meter.
Yes.
Well, then I called down to the city hall to do that. It was $7,000 to get that meter. That's what I was told.
Is it $7,000?
It's an impact fee.
Yeah, there's a lot to it, and there's some discussion, I mean, that's something that council needs to talk about.
Because,
I didn't think that it was $7,000.
yes, sir.
Yeah, because you have a tap fee.
But it, to your point, if you.
So then we're
that's-
we're charging right now the impact fee on a sprinkler meter?
No, we go through the averaging process.
Yeah, I don't think it's an impact fee. I don't think that's the reason that there's a high cost, but there is a tap fee. So whatever, and that's set around, I honestly can't, off the top of my head, I'm $1,500, $2,500. So that's a part of the fee. There's several fees go into it, and that's the reason people aren't separating out their sprinkler system.
Right, and so it's really kind of, we're not helping ourselves very much.
That's a lot of.
Okay. Well, the fees that we're charging on this should pay for the cost of it. It's not a profit center for it. If it costs the city, I mean, honestly, if it costs the city $7,000 for you to install a new meter, which I don't see how.
But the year before, I think it was $250, right?
It's definitely more than 250.
Well, no, when Doug and
It's
Marcia
somewhere in
did
between.
that, and you don't mind.
No. So that is something that we absolutely can dig into to figure out what
Okay.
that anomaly is. And if our policies are off and they need to be fixed, that's what this whole process is about. We're off of development. So if
Well, I
we,
just have to throw that in there.
so I just want to bring it back to development because that is kind of the topic of
apologize.
tonight. If you want to dig into utility policies, we can absolutely talk about that. As I've said before, this is a good conversation to have. I like having them in this setting because a number of you have had these conversations with, not everybody, over time, and each one takes hour and a half. And so when we can come together like this, sometimes it's just more efficient.
Well, it answers, like, we may have the same questions.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's smart
Good
to
question.
have it where we can go back and forth, which that's exactly what you and I talked
Right. So we'll continue to figure out ways to do this. During the council meeting, it's not appropriate, but we can have conversations like this.
As
And
long as you do it long enough in advance, so we know what's going on, your
Agreed.
council meetings will run smooth as glass.
Yep. Okay, so some other, if we can talk a little bit about, let me show you this before we get too far.
So I got on the water tap fee. So residential, 3/4 inch and 1 inch in size pays $2,500.
There's more.
Let's,
yeah,
and Sheena,
Large-
wait, Sheena,
That's just the 10.
I'm gonna, we've gone kind of too far off of the development,
Okay,
but absolutely, Sheena digs into this stuff. She knows this
Thank you,
stuff.
Sheena.
She doesn't like leaving stones unturned. I like that a lot.
that's what I'm here for.
Okay, so let me show you this. I'm gonna have to do it a little bit differently. Okay. So somebody asked me, at what point, like some people have been caught off guard by development that's happening around us. So one of the things, I've given this presentation a couple of times, I thought it would be good to have it here, just so you know how, like what's happening around us with some of the properties. If you ask me, when do I start worrying that development is gonna happen around me? I would say the first point where you should start worrying is if there's land next to you that you don't know. Start worrying. If a for sale sign goes up on that property, start worrying. If a sold sign comes up on that property, start worrying. But there are also some other steps that go inside of there. I thought I'd give you kind of a high level overview of what those look like. But right now, if you look at, and I'm just hitting just on the very surface of this, there are other, I think there's another property somewhere out here. It's like 10 acres. It's been for
Wait,
sale.
orient me, where are
Sorry.
we?
This is historic downtown right here.
Okay,
This is east going toward San Antonio
gotcha.
and
Now
west
I'm with you.
going toward Honda. So the airport, whoa, sorry. Here's the airport here. If you look at the properties that are around here, this isn't it, but this is, right here we've got the Decock Farm. If you look at all of this property, these are the things that are either owned by developers or are actively being marketed for sale. This doesn't mean, because there's a ton of other property that is owned that is not actively being marketed,
Right.
but all of these are. These right here are being marketed. This stuff by the bank is being marketed. This area right here, kind of the entrance to what is going to be Flat Creek, is owned. This piece right here is actually now owned by the Chevy dealership. This is the Endura property that's out across from Victory Lane on the north side. This is Flat Creek. This is the development agreement that was just approved, and that's this area right here. This is Alsatian Oaks. This is the Country Village Estates as it has already been approved. They still have another piece of that they've not brought anything to us, but that is something else that they still own that piece right there. They're not actively doing with. This piece right here is commercial. Actually, both of these pieces right here.
And then one, Darren, is that Napa Estates right there, the long?
This is Country Lane right here. The Smoothie King right here. This is back behind here.
Pizza Hut.
That helps.
There you go. So if you think about the Persine's driveway right next to the Walmart, it's the property that's on the other side. This is where we were looking. There was a hotel that had proposed, but this property back here is also, all of this is commercial zoned. Currently, commercial zone has always been commercial zone. This is the 35 acres that we just discussed. And there's still little spots in here. Remember, all of this basically up to where the homes start. All of this property between Old Highway 90 and US 90, that is all outside of city limits. So people ask me, well, how can they sell animals there? Because they're outside of our zones, our codes. Yep. And so that is owned by, and I don't know that they have a particular affinity to. I've heard of prices on that. And there's still a lot more property. If you would have asked me if some of these other ones would have ever been sold, I would have said no. All of this purple is owned by the same. Hugo Gutierrez bought this like 20 years ago, 22 years ago. The Vanderwall property, right? He also owns, it's about 260 acres. If you think about the very end of the regional park out to Lower Lacoste Road here, across the river. Here's the river as it kind of comes along. But like as you go into Medina River West off of Lower Lacoste, as soon as you cross that bridge, there's that old, I think that was a Kemp homestead back in there. This piece right here, that he owns all of this stuff that abuts right up next to the regional park, all the way up to the Bain property on this side and Medina River West on this side. So that is all owned by somebody who's trying to do something. This piece right here, this purple piece, has all been removed from our ETJ. We are continuing, in hearing some of the things that were being proposed on there, we are continuing to try to inspire them to do something better. They have been negotiating with the county. I've been in active discussions with our county to try and align on our strategy to make sure, because the county, honestly, I don't agree with all of the stuff that goes into their development agreements. I don't like that they're doing so many gated subdivisions and not accepting new roads, because I think that gives us all a risk, and that's kind of a separate thing. And
So they
creating these,
were in our ETJ and they removed, or they've never been?
they were in our ETJ and they were moved. So we have no subdivision ordinance over that. So most of this is all airport property up to, this is airport property here. That's Keller Grain, right? This is the south side of Alsatian Oaks. So that's all retail there. So that is what I know currently. These are the people that have come to us and said, we want to do something here. And it's ranged from all kinds of different things that we think are terrible ideas, things that we think are interesting ideas. We've been approached by a sports complex that wants to build this massive facility. And we're trying to say, let's find a great place for this because we love youth sports, but let's find the appropriate place to build it so that it has the least amount of impact on traffic. The fact is that they're going to do what they're going to do. We're not asking people to develop. We are trying to find partners for sports, youth sports, because it's so important to us. We are trying to find people to do that. But in terms of going out and searching for home builders, I'd rather find a home builder that will build something that is more like Castroville. But I'm not going to, I don't know. I'll speak for myself. I can't speak for council. I don't like the fact that all this good farmland is getting covered up. But
it's going to.
But I don't own it.
The kids are going to.
If I had enough money to buy it, I'd do it and sit on it, but I don't.
The money that they're being offered
Yeah.
That's
So-
right there.
And that brings us to another challenge. One of the things that we did, let's talk about inside of the development agreements. So what we had started doing with the development agreements, we went through a very lengthy process with Alsatian Oaks. And this is one of these things that we realized too late we were doing for a reason and we needed to change. So we took the amount of public engagement that was going into that with the quality standards that were built with that. And we said, this is the best deal that anybody will ever get, and we need to start tightening our requirements from there. So the things that you have seen, the newer ones that have come out, have had more requirements on them than Alsatian Oaks did. If you look at the Alsatian Oaks, the smallest allowable lot in Alsatian Oaks is 6,000 square feet. It has to be on average with the open space, an average of 8,000 square feet. And they talk about the different lot sizes. Initially, they were supposed to start at 250. There was a set that was 250, a set that was 350, and a set that was 400. I think that all of those have probably increased by about $100,000 across the board because of just construction inflation. When you look at the 35 acres that is right here, 10 acres of that, basically from the back of the house up to 471 was in the city limits. The 25 acres behind that were in the county. If we did nothing with that, what they could have been could be disastrous. It could have been, what are they allowed to build? They can build apartment complexes. How high can they build them? There is no limit. They could build self-storage units. They could build mobile home parks. I've looked at, there's an apartment complex. I looked specifically over, I remember this area in San Antonio, it's like Jones Maltsburg and Thousand Oaks. I was looking at, they had a cluster of apartment complexes there, and taking the same acres that they had there, if you extrapolate that out just to that 25 acres, they could have built nearly 670 units in that one area. And so taking this, we did say, let's figure out something that works for us. One of the misunderstandings was we did not, I think the realtor may have suggested this. They said that they came to us with 12,000 square foot lots and we said, no, make them smaller. We did not do that. They came to us and they gave their proposal. Our thing, like with what happened, Alsatian Oaks happened before I came. There were still some of the people that were here, but I still think it was a good development agreement, and I stand behind their decision. I think we need to continue to make that better and find better ways to improve it, but it was a good start. With these, we wanted to look at quality. The fact that it was going to get developed is a reality. It was for sale. People were shopping it. At one point, there was a poise that was suggested there. At one point, there were apartments that were looked at there. And so we did proactively engage with them and say, let's try and figure out how to do something a little bit better. And so we did challenge them. We challenged them a little bit too far, and they're like, no, we don't want to do that. We were trying to create additional open space, and they weren't going for that. But we did get to a compromise with them. And part of that compromise were construction standards that are not, we cannot mandate them by state law, but through a development agreement we can. We can't mandate them, but we can negotiate them. And what we were trying to do, if you make a house too cheap that is right next to, like when you look at how the appraisals are done, they take it by area. Same thing the realtors will do. They'll take a price per square foot in a specific area. If the price per square foot, if the cost of homes in this area was less than it was in the existing country village, then you have the possibility of the property values going down. Because you have 130 in an area that has, I don't remember exactly how many are in this area, but you could potentially reduce their sellable value. If you price them too expensive, then they would increase the property value and the associated tax. And so we tried to put the development standards that were as closely in line with the adjacent neighborhood as possible. It's kind of on the high end of the average. So I think they're what do we say? They were 450 to 650, somewhere around there, which is about the same as Country Village. So the intent was to try and do something that is nice, that is in line with the neighborhood. And the fact is that when Country Village was built, price per acre, I'm guessing, was in the single-digit thousands. And now property around here is going for tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars per acre, depending on their proximity to Highway 90. So the cost of property, the cost of the actual property is significantly more. One of the things, just in consideration, going from an 8,000 square foot lot and talking to, I've done a lot of research with the developers to understand where their price points are, what are the things that trigger different costs and different things for them. And what I found pretty consistently was per the lot cost, the developers build the horizontal, the street infrastructure, the utility infrastructure, and then they sell those lots off to home builders or commercial builders. For home building, typically it's 4 times the cost of the developed lot is about the price point that the builders will get for a return on money. So if they are buying a $100,000 lot, and that is after all of the infrastructure has gone on, then that will be a $400,000 house. It could be a little bit over, a little bit under, depending on the amenities that they put in it, but that's generally the price point that they do that. So if you take the $450,000 to $650,000 per home, increase that by 50%, now you're at 600 plus to almost $1 million, which could increase the property taxes of the adjacent communities. And so we're trying to be very cautious about this. Again, not forcing it. If that's the way they want to go, then that's the way they want to go, but just taking some of these things into consideration.
And the developer's representative at the town hall that we had here in June, she even said it's a mixture of lot size. There's 8,000 is the smallest, all the way up to the 12,000.
Yeah, she would say.
And this is the one that they've given. Here's the, I think we had, here we go.
And they are working with TxDOT because TxDOT did say that 471 is widening there. So they're yeah. So
one of the nice things about that is that it does hit 471. Anytime any developer has an entrance onto a TxDOT roadway, they force them to do a traffic impact analysis. That's one of the reasons you've noticed that Alsatian Oaks has not connected with Highway 90, because they require specific improvements that have to happen there. So I actually like TxDOT being involved with that because they have some pretty strict standards about what they have to do off-site. Some of even the smaller developments, it was millions of dollars to improve them. I don't like the improvements that TxDOT is doing because I think it's too big, too close to town. All the way up to Circle K, we're looking at 10 lanes. I think ultimately it's two through lanes either way, 2 left turn U-turn, and 2 right turn lanes. I don't know. That mix of it is 5 lanes on each side, and it's just huge. So that's why we're working on some of the other stuff. Now with the other, I don't think I have a picture of the northern route. Let me show you the northern route. So part of this is working with the county on creating additional pathways in and around Castroville. The unfortunate thing is most of the traffic that's happening here, if you look at how much development has happened actually inside of Castroville in the last 10 years versus the amount of traffic that is generated over the last 10 years, almost no construction and a stupid amount of traffic because of everything that's happening around us, especially understanding what's going on up toward Rio Medina and how many subdivisions the county is looking at and the amount of increased traffic that's happened up at Tranco. We are coordinating very tightly with the county on making sure that they're creating these. So this will be done in a partnership with them to alleviate some of the traffic that's currently going through Country Village. They're taking this as a shortcut. It's the quickest way for them to do that. So part of the requirements from the developers is putting the northern route there. It's 120-foot right of way. If you think about Highway 90 through town is 100 feet, so it's 20 feet wider than that. The intent is to have 2 lanes each way with a center turn lane and some right turn lanes. So it's creating a way for people that are coming from north on 471, coming south and trying to go east. It creates a route for them to go do that. Ultimately, we will want to tie that in. On the other side, we have to work with the property owners on getting it across to Goatman Road. I don't think we're talking about doing any kind of additional improvements, but just allowing them to go west of town. ultimately to deal with this, and this is something we're working both with TxDOT.
Is that a 10-year horizon?
Gosh, that I actually expected the northern route to be done already, but because I think a lot because of what happened in the during and after COVID, and with the increase in costs for everything and the slowdown in construction, we honestly thought that by this time we would have like 10 times the amount of construction that has already gone on, which we were freaked out about. But we, based on our velocity of construction, it would have already been done. Because the construction has slowed down and because we're having the developers pay for their portion of that road, it is taking a little bit longer. I don't know the exact time frame on it, but we have the engineering already done through an agreement between the city and the county. There are some landowners that the county is having to deal with that are in the county. But we had our latest meeting with them 2 weeks ago, I think it was, and they're working through those final details of that. So it is in the process. It will be done, and it may be done in sections as people are building out. So on the west section might go a little bit slower than the east section where they're actively building and the builders are paying for that right away. The other we've got to figure out how to pay for it really. So I think that it falls within, especially with some of the development, that some of the increased business revenue that the county's been going, I think that they can probably do it in their existing budget to do their portion of it and have the developers pay their pro rata share. If anybody develops along that corridor, then they would pay their pro rata share for that portion of it in the future.
I think you could save yourself a ton of grief in the next 6 months. I mean, you're just about as public with this as you could be.
Yep,
some of this is, like you said, all you can do is influence. You can't mandate.
Right.
But I think there's a perception, rightly so, this town, I think back Valerie, I think maybe our fathers never ever saw Castroville. When I think about the city limits, you go, why are they so constructed? Why did we not think that we'd ever get a little bit bigger? But hindsight's 2020. So,
yep.
But I think some of these things are, for all intents and purposes, they're out of our control. I mean,
and they only sell to each other.
Right. The county and us have to work together to get us the best interpretation of what we like, what we need. But some of these things, it's just, I mean, especially in the single ownership cases, in the fuchsia color or the purple color, we're really just hoping that they do what we want them to do or what we'd like them to do. But I think you need to just be, I would put a full page of this either on the web or in the back of the paper to say, look, here's what's coming. Like it or not, this is land you can't control. We can't mandate what people sell.
Yep.
We can't mandate what families are able to sustain a business anymore. The model's just not there for farmers like it was back in the day.
Just like we're not going to say that you can't sell your house.
Right.
I mean,
And I think about Castroville, there's so many different houses, so many different size lots. I'm glad that there's a mix because that's what makes inside the river the best. I mean, there was houses built, like you said, our parents' house was built in the 50s, 52, I think. And it was just like our neighbors. But then there was another group that built another style of home. But that's the charm. And I'm glad that there's only 24 lots. And I hope.
I think there's more than that.
Yeah, but even there, the size and the mix is what's beautiful. It's because there was many different economic strengths of families and their ability to purchase. But that was Castroville, 50, 60 years ago. That's just what we were.
Yep.
And I just hope we maintain that part. There's always going to be a mix. You have to respect some of the older folks that don't. I mean, it used to be back in the day where you could see mowers going up and down the street, kids mowing each other's lawns or grandparents' lawns. You just don't see that anymore.
Right.
And it's an expense, and to fix incomes, that's tough. And I could see why much of our older citizens don't want yard because now you have to find somebody to do it.
We just don't need to do that development inside of current city limits. That's where we start looking at, it makes sense for us to start looking at doing some sort of affordable housing without creating pockets of poverty.
Yeah.
If we create pockets of poverty, we're doing ourselves an injustice. But if we can find people that are willing to spread that out a little bit and not create these basically, ghetto areas, there are good city planning efforts that you can do that will incorporate that. And so part of that is as you try and maintain the agrarian feel I mean, it's going away quickly, but part of the way that you do that is through cluster development. Allow them to have some density in clusters with a lot of open space around it. Part of that is not, in Alsatian Oaks, it was mandated that they have 6-foot privacy fences. And if you look at, like here, we don't have many 6-foot privacy fences. And so as we adapted along the way, we no longer mandated fences. We said if you do build a fence, it's got to be cedar or wrought iron or stone. But you don't have to build a fence if you don't want.
What does the pressure from the west look like going towards Hondo?
It is ever present. If you look at the water infrastructure that's happening out there, it is definitely happening out there. If you look at, I mean, just coming down, I usually come out on like Geneva and right across from the post office. If I leave out of my house at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's a steady stream of cars coming over there. So what's happening out by the golf course, what's happening between here and Honda, that's one of my biggest fears is some of that property. Luckily, we've got some landowners that are holding strong and not selling theirs off, but there's quite a few that have. Even between here and Dunley, there's a lot of property.
Where does
for sale.
RETJ end west of the city?
It's a half mile, well, effectively, it's
Just
a
a
half
half mile.
mile from the.
Oh, 3 points?
Right.
The old 3 points?
Except people can remove themselves.
Right.
So the area of influence that we're looking at is if they're adjacent to city limits, if we have some ability to bring them into the fold and encourage something better, and that includes streets, that includes, sports facilities, library facilities, different things that, the way that I explain it to them is there is a cost to each one of us every time you cover a good farmland. You have the right to do it. We respect that, but you need to pay for yourself, and you need to add to the collective. You need to do something to offset the degrade in quality of life to make something else that's better for quality of life. And so it's trying to get them to understand where that needs to happen. The other thing is making sure that we've got, one of the things that we are working through is figuring out the right mix of residential versus commercial. If you look at commercial, going back to understanding where the money comes from and goes to, in the general fund that pays for the parks and the streets and the libraries and the cops, especially cops is a huge portion of that. Those are paid out of the general fund, out of property tax and sales taxes. 13% of that is rooftops. You have a total value of, I think we're $350 million after exemptions on property tax for the city, for just like the total value. The residents only bring in 13% of that. 67% of our general fund revenue comes from property taxes and sales taxes from our businesses. So as these people are building out homes, we're also getting them to add in some additional retail, light commercial, office space, something that people aren't going to have exemptions on, and that can actually generate money so that we can reduce the financial impact. I mean, the worst thing that we could do is we've got the same cost for police services, for streets, and we add nothing but homes. That's going to end up costing you and me more money. And so we're trying to figure out how we continue to make new pay for new and looking at the associated costs. And we look at that honestly when it comes to incentives as well. Part of the incentives, you've got to do, there's a couple of different incentive mechanisms that we have. And I don't know if we want to go, we can do this in a separate session if you want.
How does the Downtown Development Board get in concert with the development ordinances that need to be made, right? If we're going to sustain the charm of Castroville and everything else, there's no doubt we need to tighten up any zoning ordinance that needs to be done. Where do we think business we confine it to keep, I think the rooftops that we want? But where is the downtown development? How do they work together? Are they beholden to the property owners in downtown Castroville that they're trying to develop? Are they influencing too much of the zoning ordinance, or is there a fine line?
So no single business, whether it is the bank or one of the properties that the development group owns, or any one of the other businesses that are around there, none of them has undue influence. They all have the same voice. They can come to the same meetings. They can make the same recommendations. They all have a voice. No one voice carries more. I would say the churches carry a larger voice because it's a greater population and there's more impact for that. But the individual businesses don't have any more voice than you and I. So they have come to us requesting that they even do stuff. And we've said, make sure that it gets into the downtown master plan as a part of what that looks like. Once that's done and you want to do an improvement, as long as it's within there, then we have no problem with it. If you want to do
I'm
something.
not leaving because I
Of course.
object or anything. It's, I'm open minded.
Hang on, I got one more question.
Yeah.
On that particular issue. You may want to hear this question.
Oh, okay.
Since you brought it up, the downtown commercial revitalization area, and back that. My question is this: there's a current zoning of the historic, commonly referred to as historic commercial area downtown. But yet, when the city adopted the tiers for the downtown revitalization, it covers an area more than twice that, almost 3 times that.
Yep.
So is it the intent of the city to expand the downtown commercial zoning?
No.
So they can grow out that?
If you look at the intent of the TERS,
No, I'm just asking, yeah.
I know, I'm trying to explain to you.
Sure.
If you look at the intent of the TERS, for those of you who don't know, TERS is a tax incremental reinvestment zone. So we drew the zone at a specific size that encompassed the businesses on Highway 90 and the historic downtown, because we said that these are the areas we feel are going to be improved.
Sure.
And one will build on the other. As these are improved, those will get improved. And so it's capturing all of that to do something that is good for the entire area. So it's not about putting preference over one versus the other. It's where do we feel like this, the redevelopment, I guess, what are the other areas that will increase? If they increase the rental rates in this area,
Sure.
that will follow through to what's happening right next door on Highway 90. Those properties will increase in value. And so if we want to do something that is, whether it is increasing police presence in this area, or whether it's doing some monument signs or doing some beautification efforts, you capture the incremental increase. Because the regular increase, just that happens through normal whatever, that pays for the base city services. This allows us a bucket of money that we can use specifically toward that, and probably it would go to some of the items that would be in the downtown district.
So there's an advantage to being in.
No,
Well,
they don't have an advantage to being TERS any more than somebody on Highway 90 has to be.
My question to that just leads to that next question is I got it, the downtown revitalization and expansion of Highway 90. I think that's awesome because we're able to do that. But that overlay of that tiers reaches into your mother's property, Mr. Francis's property. It reaches back into a block or two outside the commercial area into what's now currently residential areas. Is that, yeah, it does. Mr. Lewis has the overlay.
Yeah.
I don't know
Well,
about that,
I don't want to split hairs.
but I don't either. But it overlays into a larger area off of the highway. So my question is, when the city adopted that, was there an underlying thought that someday that would become commercial?
No.
To become part of the tiers, but that would stay alone?
The TERS, what we tried to do was keep it to the existing commercial areas.
Yes, sir.
And there was a little bit of, I didn't think that we got any residences inside of that. I thought it was all commercial.
Darren,
Yep.
remember that those properties, everything on that block except for one property there, that's on.
Okay, right.
Oh, yours, yes.
I just
But
wanted
your
to ask,
mom's-
no, I'm just trying to expand it out because the overlay is larger. Mr. Lewis. It is larger.
But the TERS is not where we're trying.
Okay, I just thought
Why
I'd
didn't
ask.
you include the Steinbach house?
The Steinbach house doesn't generate tax revenue.
Yeah, the churches are included.
But some of the other things don't either, because I thought it included some things on the other side of Highway 90.
We drew, if you look
That were
back,
some residences.
I think that it's hard to jag it around those. We tried to take as close as possible to the businesses themselves. And it was specific, it was businesses in a certain sector. We didn't go, although I think we actually took it back to Providence.
Did you include both the bakery and Sammy's? Because I didn't think so.
Do
I thought
y'all
we
have
took it back
any,
to.
are y'all thinking
Well,
about
let me-
possibly
wait,
changing
let me-
this to dual zoning?
No,
For
no.
residential
No, I just
Let me
wanted to ask
finish
that.
this question first. So the question about the TERS is, it's a matter of where you capture additional revenue.
Yes.
It speaks nothing to what we intend to do there, because what we intend to do there is what you intend to do there. And that is leave this as much the same as possible. But what the TERS does is, as those values increase, they spend $2 million on Dan Meat Market. And so the property values will follow that for the commercial areas. As those property values increase, I mean, it's a more valuable property now. We can capture that increase in revenue that goes into a bucket that can only be spent in that area. And so it would be spent on improving the streets, and it would be the things that are in the master plan. And we would determine which ones are the highest value for the businesses, the residents, or the community in that downtown area. But that'll be done through a public process as well.
But to me, it was a little strange, and I've said this to you before, that Mr. Benford was the one that was the go-person for that, and he's a major developer in that. And to me, that's a major conflict of interest.
I think that any town is lucky to have people that are willing to
I
spend.
think it's,
Well, let me finish.
it's a
I know,
conflict.
let me finish.
I
I
don't
think
care.
any town is lucky to have people that will step up and
I
serve on.
don't
Let me
agree, I don't
finish.
disagree with
Can I-
you on that. I don't disagree.
I think that we need people that will step up with their time and their experience, their money where possible, to increase the beautification of. If they're doing this for self-serving things and only for themselves, that's not good for any community. What's good for a community are people that are willing to take the time and the effort, their expertise, their money, and do better things for the city.
But it's
And
for
because
profit.
they're doing
It's for profit.
You're saying Valerie, they ultimately benefit from.
Absolutely.
yeah, it's a terrible investment. If you look at the return on the investment, it's a great long-term investment.
Regardless, it's a conflict of interest.
Okay, well, we can have that conversation. But, okay, were there any other questions that we didn't handle for development? I got a ton more information. We can set up another one of these if it helps. It just really depends on what you guys want. Okay. I think that everybody's full now. Do you want me to go into any more detail, or you want to skip that? We're done? Okay. Let's continue the conversation. Let's continue to repair that trust relationship. Continue to hold us accountable for the things that are important to you. And let's make sure that we do this right. We are in this together, and we need to stay that.
I appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation.
Sorry it's taking so long.
No,
I took some.
there's a lot of information.
If you'll stick around for a second, I'll talk to you about that. It's outside of this discussion. Okay, so I think that we are through the agenda and are adjourned at 8:04. Thank you, everybody, for your time, for your input.
Thank you, Derek.
You want to, Scott? You want to stop the recording? I don't know how to do that.
Sorry about that.